I want to make a Christmas present wrapping scene. So first of all, I needed something to form the presents, and I found these. These are little beads from a bead shop. They're actually made of marble, so they're nice cubic pieces of marble. So they will cook in the oven without damaging them. And these are from glass blocks. Those are some more little ones. These are glass blocks from a Chinese shop. In the marbles section, they've got these interesting glass blocks. So they will bake in the oven as well with bits of clay on them. And they've got all sorts of different shapes and sizes. I've got a curved one here. This is not open, so that one's quite nice. So these are all good formers to form clay over. But first of all, we need some clay that's going to look like wrapping paper. I'll just put those out of the way for the moment. And here I've got some clay that's rolled out. It's actually a bit cold in here in the light well because it's a bit chilly down here in winter. So it's the problem I may have with this, with preparing it in advance, is it might crack a little bit. So the first thing we need to do is decorate it. Now I find that there are a few things that you can use to decorate with, one of them is these little printers. I bought these in Lidl recently, but you can get all sorts of tiny little printers and they're quite good. And then there's this one, I can't remember for the life of me where I got this from, a craft shop, but scour your craft shop, you'll find all sorts of little printing things. Or you can make things yourself with minute mould. You can actually make a relief printer with minute mould, so that's quite interesting. And here I've got some silvery glittery powder. I think it's called Snowflake. And basically you just dip in there and print onto it. You might need to blot off any excess because otherwise it can, bits of it can rub off before it's baked. So as you can see, that makes quite a nice print. I will just blot some of it off. I'll use an extra piece of clay. And take off any excess, because if you don't, it's going to smudge later. Right. I won't do all of that because it'll just take so long, but I'll just show you how to put this on the blocks. So obviously I'm going to need it to be the other way up so that the printing comes on the outside. And then you've got to sort of guesstimate how big that is, about that size, and cut out a square that's going to be big enough to wrap the whole thing. Put that to one side. And then lift this up and gently, because if you don't do it gently it may crack. This is cracking a bit anyway. If it's nice and warm in your house and you've just made it, you won't have a problem. Just that I rolled this out a few hours ago. So bring this at the sides and then this bit at the other side. don't think I made this long enough. I actually made that a little bit too short, which is a bit annoying. So that's definitely going to crack on that corner. I'm trying to make it stretch a bit further. I'm going to have to replace the print on that side as well with touching it so hard. Bring it up all the four sides and nip it together on the corners. And then carefully cut those corners off. Now you can see me cutting towards myself with this blade. I'm fully in control, but I have to suggest that you cut downwards and towards the ceramic tile for safety reasons. So I'm just making sure those little edges join together. As I say, this would work better if I hadn't prepared it several hours ago. It was still soft and fresh. I'm just going to replace just a bit of this printing on the side that I drew up. If I can find it, yep, that's it. The rest's okay. And then you leave that to bake. You're also going to want a bit for round the top. So I'll just show you how to do it. I won't print on this one because it'll take me time to do that. So basically for the top, I've already got a bit of print, so I might get away with that. For the top, all you need is just a little overlap. So pop that on there and basically just bring it very slightly around the top. And then I'm going to trim off all the excess. So that it's only just coming over the top. So those two halves are going to bake in the oven, and when they're baked I'll remove them from the blocks and then put them back together as a whole present. You can do exactly the same thing with these. So you bring the sides up for that one and make a top piece on a separate one. And I've also got very tiny ones as well. If you want to make a circular one, I've found two cutters that happen to interlock reasonably, and I wrap some round that one and some round that one. Little bit of difficulty because sometimes it pushes in at the bottom, so if you can get a covered ended thing, a dowel or something, a couple of dowels, it's even better to do that with. Right, the other thing I want to do is I want to make a roll of fabric. So here we have a very thin piece of gold clay which I've just rolled out, so this shouldn't misbehave, I hope. And I think a nice red print on this one. So I've got a little imprinter that looks like a snowdrop, and I've got some red metallic printing powder. And I want these to pretty much overlap so that you can't really see. I mean, it is a snowflake, but I don't really want it to be too obvious because obviously you don't get red snowflakes, except in my world. I'm tapping off the powder because I don't want too much in the one spot. Otherwise it gets a bit blurry. I'm overlapping these to get plenty of pattern on it. Now I don't need to do the whole of this piece because it's going on a roll, so I'll only see the outside bit. So I'll just do one more line of them just to make sure. That should be it. That's enough of that. Make sure that you get this clay as thin as you can, and it is a very nice colour, this gold. It's Primo, a light gold, but all the Primo metallic colours are nice. Once again, I don't want too much of this colour coming off because it could get a little bit blurry. So I'm just taking off some of the excess by pressing some more clay against it to pick it up. A bit like using blotting paper, really. Not to stick too hard though, that could be a problem. Right, now what I need is a knitting needle, just a nice narrow knitting needle. And I have to think about what size I'm going to do. I'm going to imagine that the piece of wrapping paper that I want is about 2.5 feet wide. So I'll just tidy up the edge. And I think that's about 2.5 inches in length. I'm only being approximate. Something at over 2 inches is good. Wrapping paper comes in all sizes. And I don't want too much clay because I don't want a very fat roll. So now I'll get this bit started. Tuck that bit in. And the great thing about using knitting needles is your work can slide off. A little bit difficult to do it, to slide one thing off a knitting needle. It's much easier if you make a double size and cut it in half and use the opposing force to pull them off. But I didn't want to do that much printing today. So I don't want that completely rolled up because I want it in progress. So I'm now just going to wrap that over like that so it looks as if the wrapping paper's been undone, ready for use. And I'm going to bake that as it is. You can use a similar method for making rolls of fabric. It looks beautiful. Okay, so that's that done. Right, so these are the baked things and they're just hot out of the oven, very hot as it happens actually. So you've got to be a bit careful when it's extremely hot because A, you can burn yourselves on the stones and things, and B, you can just break the polymer clay because it's too flexible so it crumbles. But I do need to take this off while it's still hot because otherwise it won't slip off. So I'm just going to wiggle it a bit and then it will come off. But you do have to do that while it's hot, otherwise it won't come off. But it's very useful using those knitting needles. They do work very well. I'll just take the, ooh, that is hot. I'll just take the top off the, no I can't, it's too hot. Top off the stone, the little stone block. Oh. got to get the other ones. I'll just take them off the tile so that they can cool quicker. But as you can see, that these have come out very nicely, these little rolls of paper. That's one I did earlier. I'll just get this tile out of the way because that's the problem. It won't cool down with that tile there. So you need to start just lifting the clay away from the stone while it's still warm. This is really a little bit too hot, so I wouldn't advise you did it while it's still this hot. But if it splits, don't worry, because you can glue it back together a bit. But it needs to come away from the stone while it's still warm, because otherwise it won't come off at all. The same goes for when you take the little people off the piping nozzles that we made in the last few days. And you need to try and persuade it to come out. That one doesn't want to. It's still well and truly stuck. Right, that's coming off. Albeit it's split down on all the sides, but that's fine. That's okay. So that's the little box. It has got to split down the side, but it will glue. And then you need to put plenty of glue on the inside to hold that together. On each of the 4 edges. And pipe the top. Oh, I should have trimmed the top actually before I started with that. I need to just trim this top so that it's nice and flat, so the edges are all ready to accept the top. This is not a good example because it was the one that was cracking a bit earlier, so it's not very square, not as square as I'd like it to be. But anyway, then what you need to do is pipe around the top with your glue. And then you can add, if the top's properly trimmed, which I'd forgotten about that as well, trim the top as well while it's still warm. Cuts much easier when it's warm, so that it's nice and straight. And then glue that on the top. And that glue should dry clear, so it should look good when it's finished. So that's not a perfect example, but it will do. And then we need to tie some ribbon around it. So I'll get some more of this red ribbon. I want a small piece, nice thin piece, good. And then tie that in a knot before I put it on there, before I put it on the parcel, because otherwise I won't be able to get it in. And when the parcel is dry, it's not dry at the moment, but when it's dry, it's better to do it. tie that up like that. Make sure your first knot's tight before you tie your second knot. Bit difficult one, I'm still waiting for it to dry, that's not going to work. Oh, it's not too bad. And then turn it over and tie it the other way. These are very thin and fiddly bits of ribbons, so it's not really my thing, this. Right. And if you want a bow on the top, it's best to do it after you've done the main part of the tying. Because then what you can do is get a separate piece. I'll use this piece. Tuck it inside. And tie it together again. And then you can either make bows or little curls or whatever with the end of that. I'm not going to make a fool of myself trying to make a bow, so I'll just see if I can get it to curl, and if it won't, well then it won't. It's not going to today. So there's a little parcel, and there's a roll of a couple of rolls of wrapping paper, and I've made a few more parcels which I'll add to this, and I'll put some scissors next to it, and that should look pretty. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel, because the more subscribers, the more watchers, the more videos will come out. Thank you very much.